Can I get a motion to adopt the April 14th meeting minutes?
I have a change to the minutes.
Okay.
In the introductions recap, it stated that there were 2 remaining commission vacancies from environmental justice communities. But in section 108 of the law, it specifically says environmental justice organizations. So I wanted to understand if EJ communities were able to be represented in that spot, and is there still 1 vacancy then?
First, I believe that there wasn't an intentional replacement. The statutory language is appropriate, so we should correct the minutes to reflect the term organization in place of communities. And we did add 1 environmental justice member, Mr. Delgado. We are still 1 member short on the 3-member requirement. We've been making diligent efforts, but so far have not been able to attract another environmental justice organization. So I think the process now would be to move to amend the minutes to reflect the change suggested. And so I can get a motion to move to amend the minutes to replace communities with organization in the minutes from April 14th.
So moved. Second. Was that Josie?
Yeah. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain, Delgado.
Thank you, sir. And so the April 14th meeting minutes have been approved. The ground rules we have up on the screen, there were some concerns raised about some of the ground rules that we had proposed at the first meeting. What we had proposed to do, the first suggestion was that we get rid of the 3-minute allotment per member on a given topic. So we have proposed simply to strike that provision, which states the timekeeper will also be responsible for tracking the 3-minute allotment per member on a given topic, except for in section 3 below. The second amendment is to members should focus on their remarks on the topic being discussed and should avoid returning to the items that have already been discussed. The third one, we're going to amend that. And then we're going to strike section 3, subsection 8. Members may be given 3 minutes to speak on any agenda item at the discretion of the chair and may be limited or extended as deemed appropriate by the chair. So we're just going to strike that. So can I get a motion to strike the first provision in the ground rules?
Motion to strike. Motion to strike.
Seconded.
Second, okay. Any discussion? Right. All in favor of striking section, the provision noted on the screen?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next one is, can you get a motion to amend section 3.7 as referenced on the screen?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of amending section 3.7?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The motion to amend section 3.7 is carried. Finally, the motion, can I get a motion to strike section 3.8?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of striking section 3.8?
Aye.
Any opposed? Section 3.8 is stricken as referenced. Can I get a motion to adopt the ground rules as amended this morning?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ground rules as amended this morning are adopted by the commission. Next slide, please. Advisory groups, I want to just talk about this a little bit before we start doing any voting. So we've had some internal discussions and we decided that the best approach to having these separate groups look at electronics and plastic packaging is to fashion them as advisory groups. That gives the groups a great deal more flexibility in terms of discussions. And so what we're proposing is that we'll Charge the advisory group members with performing research and presenting findings to the commission. Meetings will not be held in accordance with the open meeting law. The advisory groups will meet at least twice. The findings on the electronics EPR should be completed by August 31st to be shared at the September full commission meeting. That's the electronics meeting. And then the findings on plastics and packaging should be completed by September 30th to be shared in the October meeting, which is the plastics and packaging meeting. Then advisory groups may not consist of more than 9 commission members, because that would get us over a quorum that we would need to. So this is just designed to give us more flexibility. Obviously, all of their findings are going to be brought before the commission, discussed before the commission, but it's much more cumbersome if we got to do the whole notice and comment, no posting, things of that nature. So our idea is to set these up as advisory groups. So I'm just going to call for a motion to establish these 2 advisory groups.
It's a clarifying question. So advisory groups on mattresses, paint, and what's left?
Batteries.
Thank you, batteries.
Yeah, we made a determination that those types of EPR approaches are sufficiently mature that the commission itself should be able to consider those without breaking off and having advisory groups. The packaging and electronics, plastics and packaging and electronics are much more complex, and there's far less experience with those subjects, nationwide. So in order to kind of move things efficiently, we decided let's just deal with those here as a commission. The other ones need a little more research. And we talked about this. I know someone had moved or had asked that we do this last meeting. We thought it was a good idea. These are just more complicated topics. So that's the thinking behind it this way.
Will these also be supported by the Greener Youth?
Yeah, we will provide support for the groups themselves.
Can I make a request in that case of just along with the findings, can the advisory groups also present any like citations or information about anyone that they talk to outside of those advisory groups as they gather their research? Because I think that'll be helpful in just knowing. It's one thing to have the findings, it's another thing to know where the findings came from and who told us about them.
Great.
Yeah, I think we were envisioning, these would be public meetings. So there'd be advisory, there would be an advisory group that's made up of members of the commission, but also open for public input.
Right.
And that they would provide, there would not be any recommendations or votes taking place by the advisory group. They'd gather the information, that they'd identify some of the issues, gather some of the information relative to that, be able to present that back to the commission.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're not open meetings, but they'll be open to the public. So we'll have people. I think there's another slide on this. Yeah, so this is how we were going to set these up. Either myself or a MassDEP staff member or a consultant will serve on the advisory group and help direct the discussions. We would want a related industry representative to participate in each advisory group. Then and non-commissioned members, it's optional. Somebody who doesn't serve in the commission, would like to participate in an advisory group, they're welcome to do so. Our only real restraint is to keep commission members to 9 or less. So if a lot of people want to get involved with these, they're welcome to do so. We're asking that people contact Greg if they're interested. So I'm going to just at this point request a motion to approve the formation of 2 advisory groups for this commission.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
So is there something about using advisory group rather than subcommittee in terms of the open meetings law? I don't pretend to be an
Right.
expert on it. I had just assumed it would apply
Yeah,
to these meetings as well, but you guys have done the analysis.
yeah. I mean, I think typically a subcommittee would also subsist or consist of a quorum of a commission. That's just, you could call it a subcommittee.
And
but
there's no voting happening? Maybe
Yeah,
that's-
it just implies a
Okay.
more formal relationship. We're trying to be kind of nimble here, and just so we can kind of get a lot of input. And if we have to post every time everyone communicates, it'll get consistent. So I think this is just be a more efficient means of gathering this information. So that's the thing.
And the motion now to approve the creation of the groups, is that different from the rest of the structure that you all provide? I'm just wondering, for instance, it says 2 meetings, but presumably there could be more than 2 meetings
Yeah,
Or-
at least
okay.
2 meetings, so that's actually the motion, thank you. This is.
Sorry,
this would be
okay.
This would be the actual, I didn't articulate it well, so we would form 2 advisory groups on electronics and packaging to perform research and present findings to the EPR Commission in September and October 2025.
Yes, I'm curious and want to know more detail about who can participate in this, if it doesn't have to be members of the commission. I think that there should be some parameter on a limited number or some other type of criteria to participate in this group as opposed to just public at large.
Any suggestions for numbers, like what, do you have a suggestion of how many members you would want to limit it to?
Could I make a suggestion? Can you guys hear me? It's Senator Barrett.
Yeah,
We have run into, I appreciate the point that's just been raised. We have run into issues in other work groups recently in which essentially interest groups of different ideological stripes have packed meetings because there have been no requirement that there be one representative per group. Now, it's great to have additional folks from the same interest area listening in, but there will be a lot of gaming once you open up the core group to as many people from the same interest area as can be organized to participate. So it is a kind of a tricky thing. Certainly around voting, for example, you would want to make sure that only one entity that was a part of the group was voting. But even speaking, what I've observed is that multiple speakers will pile into a discussion. And so suddenly you'll hear 5 people from an industry group all reinforcing one another's points. Again, you want to be very inclusive and very participatory, but still avoid a situation where gaming and meeting packing becomes a possibility.
I think Greg has.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we don't, these advisory groups would not be voting or making recommendations to commission per se with a majority vote or some other type of vote. DEP's done a lot of this with our solid waste advisory groups where we have completely public and open meetings. Everyone's allowed to participate. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of information gathered by the department. And then we're taking that information in and making, policy decisions at the department level without the vote of any particular vote of an advisory group. So I think we're seeing it as the same way. If we start entering into voting or limiting the amount of people that can attend, now all of a sudden we're getting into, do we need to have an open meeting law with some sort of formation of the membership and how that works. I think we'll set ourselves back several months trying to accomplish that.
This is where I sort of come back to, I think, sort of diligent tracking of where the sources of information are is, I think, a potential solve for this, where it's like, if the electronics advisory group comes back to us and says, recycling iPads in France is a disaster. It's like, well, where'd you get that information? Did a person tell that to you? Did you read it into a report? Can you go look at the report if we have questions about it? I think it's important to be able to accept as much information as possible, to your point, but again, like I would like the findings to come with like a very careful sort of bibliography or even, sort of tracking of, oh, the advisory group met with this group, these people were the people that were at that meeting, just so we know where the findings are coming from if we have questions or want to react to them as commission members.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the comments, right? And I think, part of our role, part of my designee's role, whether it's me or someone, Greg or John, will be there to help shape and make sure there's some discipline instilled. Right? We can't just take comments from everyone. But yeah, we would want attribution. We would want to make sure that facts are accurate. So we would take responsibility. So whatever comes back to the commission, it will be vetted by personnel who have some expertise in this matter. So that, I think we hopefully get to that. Can I just remind people, we get a little housekeeping. Remember to put your sign up when you're done. It's okay, just to kind of keep control. And then I did have a comment last time, when people speak, especially the first time, just reintroduce yourselves, but not a big deal, just kind of those things in mind. So on limiting the number, is triplet.
Thank you, Mr. Beeling. I want you to finish, I have a separate question.
Okay.
So
All right,
I was
just-
premature
wanted
in turning my
to,
card.
So as proposed, this is the motion that is, I'm gonna ask for someone to move to form 2 advisory groups as suggested on the screen. Can I get a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion to form 2 advisory groups passes, and now we're back to the question.
This is Tracy Triplett from the Attorney General's office. Is the vision 2 or more public meetings would be required for each advisory group? But is this a situation where commission members can separately gather information outside those public meetings or meet with other people? I just sort of understand from talking with my legislative and policy folks that sometimes that's a structure, but this seems maybe different. Whereas to be efficient, it might be assigned to different commission members to reach out and collect information on different issues to bring back, so as to avoid having a large number of meetings. But this sounds like some larger meetings where that information is being gathered directly, so in public.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the way I would see it is, they're gonna be public, they're gonna be open to the public, and so the information that is gathered by the members of the advisory group will be submitted and described, so everyone on the advisory group and everyone watching or participating, has access to it. So we say, here's what we're looking at. There's a study from France on iPads. There's a study from whatever it is, right? And then we'll describe it and talk about EPR programs. And there's a lot in Canada. A lot of people might say, look at Quebec. Look at what they're doing up there. So I would hope that we'll be able to gather a kind of a broad range of information. And then the goal of the advisory group, and that's part of the reason I want to split it out of this commission. We just don't have enough meetings to do this. We just don't. So if those groups kind of collaborate and really kind of just put in the description, like here's where things are with plastics and packaging and electronics, and then present it to this commission, then we're going to have a robust discussion about how that influences our recommendations to the legislature. Does that help?
It is. I sort of looking at this structure, and I understand we're setting this out basically like meeting 1, identify research tasks, hear from everyone attending about what they think the issues are. And then meeting 2 is to report back on findings. But in between those meetings,
Right.
individually, commission members could digest that information, but I'm wondering, there might potentially be a meeting in between these 2 to discuss some of these issues. I'm just thinking like plastics and packaging is a big
Yeah.
complicated issue, and
We're saying a minimum of 2.
yeah,
Right?
okay.
So if after 1, everyone agrees like, hey, that we got too much things here, we're gonna need to, within reason, we can't have, we wanna make sure that we get the reports back to the commission by September, October. So there is only so much time. As we know, summer is tricky, so it could be hard, but I think, that's why we're saying at least 2. If it really requires more participation in that, we will, we'll be flexible. But I think we do need to have some sense of discipline. It could be very hard for this commission to gather all of this information, even with these advisory groups. But I think we'll at least make some progress, and we'll be able to make a recommendation, whatever that is. But we'll be better informed if we have access to a lot of data.
And finally, are you envisioning at this larger meeting potentially today that we would be setting the dates, and how are we deciding how many meetings? Is that part of the first meeting of the advisory
Yeah, I
group,
think-
or?
Greg's
I was thinking that we would get acknowledgement of coming to me if people interested in participating. And then we would form the meetings and announce them at the June 18th.
Yeah.
One where we would then formalize the meeting, at least the initial 2 meetings.
We'll try to accommodate schedules. So when people come forward, contact Greg, we figure out when people can meet, then we'll come back here and say, here are the dates that we're going to propose for the advisory groups. Just to kind of take people's.
So the meetings themselves will probably take place in late June, July, August.
It'll be fun to schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said schedule, I would have a tough time doing that, maybe.
Thank you.
We'll put up proposed date. All right, so we have moved past all of our kind of preliminaries, and now we're gonna get into presentations on paint DPR.
Sure, so first up, we're welcome, Heidi McCall from, Paint Care and the Association of
American Coatings.
American Coatings Association. To kind of, has been kind enough to come down and give us a presentation on their program that they've got running in a number of states, and be able to also answer some questions when we're done. So I'll turn it over to her, and we'll learn more about what's happening elsewhere.
Do you have the slides? Okay. And can everyone hear me okay, from here? Perfect. So, just to introduce myself, I am the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs for the American Coatings Association. I've been working there for most of my career, so almost about 30 years or so, working in different aspects of the industry. I like to think I know my industry pretty well, since I've worked, with all of the different sort of sectors, as well as on different regulatory and legislative issues. I've been focusing, part of my responsibilities probably since about 2016 has been on our paint stewardship program, Paint Care. And one of my goals and responsibilities has been to extend Paint Care to new states across the country. So consequently, we've been working in Massachusetts since well before I came into that role. I think we've been working here since, I think Dan reminded me it was 2009, perhaps 2010, somewhere in that time frame. So I'm thrilled to give you kind of an overview of the program, actually how we started, a little bit of history with it, and some statistics about how it's operating in other states. So next slide. So how do we start? How do we get this conversation rolling? I always have to be very careful about how I characterize this, because it wasn't our idea, We were approached by the Product Stewardship Institute, which is based here in Massachusetts. I'm sure many of you know Scott Cassell and his organization, but they came to us and said they wanted to talk about how to manage the end of life of paint. And basically, my industry said, that's not really our problem. We make paint, consumers use paint, and what happens then is not really our issue. But over time, with a lot of education that was initiated by PSI, we came to realize that this was a significant issue for communities across the country. And since we were the experts in paint, we make it, we have the bench chemists, and we know the technologies, it made sense for us to get involved in developing a solution to it. And began basically an adventure we call the Paint Product Stewardship Initiative. PSI gathered a group of environmental stakeholders, as well as agencies, government agencies, state government, environmental agencies, brought them all to the table. We brought the paint manufacturers to the table, and for the next several years, we started talking about what was the appropriate model, what's the appropriate methodology to really manage the end of life of this product in a way that made sense from an environmental standpoint, but as well as an efficiency and financial standpoint. And at the end of those conversations, we came up with this program we call Paint Care. I mean, essentially the elements of this program were born of these conversations, of this dialogue. And we had the elements of our draft legislation and my industry, the paint industry. And I should say, first, I don't think I said this, that I do represent the paint manufacturers, all different categories, as well as their raw material suppliers. But our industry, the paint manufacturers, made a commitment that we would try to pass this law in one state, do a pilot program and see if it really worked. We started in Minnesota. I think we passed the law there a couple times, could not get the governor to sign it. Went to Oregon, passed the law there. We did get the governor to sign it, and in 2008, we started our pilot program in Oregon. At the end of 2 years, they were very happy with the results in Oregon. We converted that pilot program to a permanent program, and we've been operating in Oregon since that time. And that really was the start of our stewardship program and how we got into the legislative business in this issue. Next slide. I want to give you just a picture of what our footprint currently looks like across the country. We are operating in 11 different states, so we actively have programs. We are collecting and managing the end of life of paint in all of those green states that you see. You can also see the timeline there of when the law was passed in each of those states. The two newest states, or the two last states, with New York and Washington. We are currently working in Illinois on our program plan. We passed that law 2 years ago. We actually had to pass some sort of corrective action legislation last year in Illinois to get our program up and running. And we are currently working on our program plan. Actually, we're done working on it. We've submitted it to the agency and they are currently reviewing it. Our plan is to begin working, actually collecting paint in December of 2025 in Illinois. The other state we passed most recently is Maryland, and we are currently working on that program plan. Hope to have that submitted to the agency by the end of the summer, and we'll begin managing the end of life of architectural paints in Maryland in 2026. So once Illinois and Maryland are up and running, that represents about 33% of the population of the United States. So I think while we're happy with the progress that we've made, you know, our goal is still to expand this program to new states. You can see up in the Northeast, we have a lot of green, and the only holes are New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So we're actively working in both of those areas, as well as New Jersey, to expand sort of in that Northeast corner. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the legislation in this model that resulted from the Paint Product Stewardship Initiative. Essentially, the elements of that program haven't really changed. It remains to be true that the program that resulted from that dialogue is working. You know, we have statistics to support that, and I'll share that in a few moments. But I would say the three legs that model program stands on are the fact that it is a statewide program. We don't do this county by county. You know, typically when I work in the regulatory arena, sort of the patchwork of state regulations is not a positive thing, but in this instance, it is, because every state does have, you know, nuances in their hazardous waste regulatory framework, and economic factors that influence our program. So it is based upon a statewide concept. We want legislation that's going to cover the entire state, so that we not only have consistency within that state, but it's also consistent with all of the other state programs as well. And that model legislation operates to benefit our manufacturers in that it provides them a level playing field. Everybody's required to participate in this program if you sell paint in that state. So that's the level playing field that I'm referencing. The next leg of the legislation is the sustainable financing that is included in the model legislation. So there is a consumer fee that is included in our model law. And again, this is statewide. It really does ensure the sustainability and the success of this program, having a reliable funding mechanism, so we don't have to guess what our budget is going to look like every single year. That is based upon sales in the state in which we're working, as well as the cost of transportation and processing. And that's basically how we develop the schedule of fees. And the last element of the model legislation is the antitrust protection. And that is what allows us to include that model fee or that sustainable financing mechanism and assess that uniform fee on every single brand of paint that is sold in that state. Without that antitrust protection, we would certainly be in violation of state and federal anti-competition laws. So those are three of sort of the three pillars of philosophy that are embodied in our model legislation. So the next slide. It's important to remember that this model legislation really puts the obligation on paint manufacturers to implement and operate this program. One of the, I think I've already mentioned this, is that the idea is it's a level playing field. Everybody who sells architectural paint into the state has to participate in this program. And actually, that's not true. You don't have to participate in this program. You have to participate in some program. We operate a stewardship program to give our members a pathway for compliance. So we've developed this program called Paint Care. We've incorporated the stewardship organization. It's called Paint Care. Our members comply with their obligations under this law by participating in Paint Care. If there's ever a paint manufacturer that doesn't want to participate in Paint Care, they don't have to. They can certainly set up their own program and do things their own way, but they still have to comply with all the elements of this law. So, that is an important point here. And what are the obligations on paint manufacturers? So the obligation is to set up this program or a program and develop a program plan that will comply with all the elements of the law. That program plan is then submitted to the environmental agency, which is the oversight agency. And that plan will embody all of the specific elements of the law, like where are we going to collect this material? What are we going to collect? How many of those collection points will there be? What's really the strategy for doing it? And once we start doing it, how are we going to interact with the oversight agency? How are we going to report to them about our results? And how are they going to be able to know whether or not we're fulfilling all of our obligations under the law? So all of that is included into our program plan. Excuse me. There's also an obligation to report to the oversight agency on an annual basis, all of those metrics, how much we're collecting, what's the method of disposition for every can that we collect. This annual report will include a financial audit that tells you basically about every dollar that we collect and how we spend it. And also in the model law, which I didn't mention, is there is an obligation for manufacturers to educate consumers and to really do some outreach on what's the most responsible, best method of managing leftover paint. And so we do report on that in our annual report as well. The other requirement in the model legislation is to make sure that we pay the oversight agency for the time they are devoting to this program. So we pay them to review our program plan, pay them to review our annual report, and for any other ancillary activities that they've engaged in, whether it's enforcement activities or others. So,
We've got a question for you.
question.
How much state by state variance is there in the role the oversight agency plays in terms of, are they able to, do some states have stronger guidelines for the program plans? Are they able to intervene and require changes? Like, is that fairly standardized, or some states give the oversight agency a larger role versus others?
Thanks for that question. It's a good one. You know, we've now been working with this model legislation since 2010. It's evolved over time. The model legislation that we're using today is so much more clear than the model legislation or the legislation that was passed in Oregon and California and, you know, in the 2013s and 14s. So the language of the statutory authorization has changed a bit over time. And we think it's much more clear and provides better guidance, not only to the stewardship organization, but to our oversight agencies as well. I would say that the personality of oversight agencies really is different state to state. You know, so Cal Recycle in California is very active. Oregon DEQ is very active. Other states are, I don't want to say that they're not active, but they're, they don't ask as many questions, perhaps. But basically, the idea is the program in California and Oregon is the same as the program that we're presenting to you, and the same that the program that we've offered to New Hampshire, the same as the program that is being implemented in Maine and Vermont. We have very good relationships with all of our oversight agencies. I mean, there's always questions about what's included, what type of paint's included, what's not included. So we have a list of program products and a list of non-program products, and sometimes that's an issue. But the guidelines for our oversight agencies is pretty much the same state to state. So next slide, please. So good segue into what's the role of the oversight agency. You know, I've already mentioned that the obligations of the manufacturers are to develop the program plan, and then once the program is operating, to submit an annual report every single year. So, you know, really two of the fundamental responsibilities of the state agency is to review and approve that program plan, make sure that what we propose to do is going to comply with the law. The program plan will include a financial audit. In that program plan, which includes the financial audit, we will propose the schedule of fees for the state. The schedule of fees does differ state to state, and again, that is due to sales in the state, so how much manufacturers are actually selling, and then what's the cost of transportation and processing in that state, and those are all variables that differ from state to state, and that's why our schedule of fees is different state to state. But that is included in the program plan, and we do ask the agency to review that.
Senator Barrett has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Senator
thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Here's
Yes.
the question relates to the issue of fees and to the last bullet point actually on the preceding slide, but that's okay, we can stay where we are. what are the pros and cons in the industry's mind in recommending that the program be paid for by fees imposed on the industry? I can easily imagine a legislature deciding to impose fees on the industry to fund the program, but I'm interested in as well in how you came, or how the industry came to believe that on balance, it's a good thing that the industry paid the fees.
That the consumer pays the fee. Correct.
I'm sorry, and I can appreciate that in many cases. Oh, well, let's go back to the previous slide. Maybe I misunderstood the import of the last bullet there, pay for oversight agency review of program plan. So
Yes.
who does the verb pay in that case? What's the subject matter noun that comes before the verb there? Who pays?
So the paint manufacturer, the stewardship organization will pay for the oversight agency's time devoted to the paint care program, to the paint stewardship.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it seems to be that the model plan views this, as I say, as a good thing. Can you shed some light on the thinking on the part of industry that led to their formulating a proposed model law that would have industry pay for the oversight agency review?
And I think this stems from some of the conversations at the very beginning of the 2000s during our paint product stewardship initiative, when, you know, our manufacturers were sitting with the Product Stewardship Institute, environmental organizations, and other state environmental agencies, and really developed kind of the elements of this program. And the idea was to make it as attractive as possible to the states. We wanted it to be zero cost to the state. I mean, this is a zero cost program because we're paying the agency for its time to oversee the program itself. Operation of the program is conducted by the stewardship organization. There's no cost there for the state at all.
By the way, I do understand the practical effect of the arrangement. I'm interested in the policy discussions within the industry that led to their deciding that this was the practical arrangement they wanted.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. I guess, Senator, I'm struggling to respond a little bit because I think the feeling on the industry, and perhaps Scott, if you want to amplify that, was we wanted to make this a zero cost program for the state. So in order to pass this law in a state, we did not want there to be a fiscal note attached to the legislation.
No, as I say, I understand that that was the desire. I'm asking why it was the desire.
Scott Cassell is here from PSI, who was probably involved with some of the early. You want to weigh in, Scott?
Yes, I can answer the question, Senator. Can you hear me from here?
Yeah.
Okay. So as the one that organization that started this dialogue with the industry in 2002, I can say.
I'm sorry, who do you represent? What I didn't catch your organizational affiliation.
I'm the CEO and founder of the Product Stewardship Institute.
And is that and who funds the Product Stewardship Institute?
State and local governments are our board of directors, and we have memberships with state and local governments and partnerships with industry organizations, universities, and international governments. So we're funded half by government and half by the private sector.
Okay. So you're saying the state governments, when you say state government, you mean the state governments that have adopted the program do in fact make the financial.
like Massachusetts DEP and others around the country that were, I used to be the waste policy director of Massachusetts, and it's a longer story, and I don't want to get sidetracked here, but I'd be happy to talk more with you one-on-one about it. But our organization started it, the Product Stewardship Institute, as a way to bring this concept to the United States. But in terms of how this consumer fee came about, first, let me say, you're putting your finger on an issue of debate. It's always been a point of debate with government officials. However, the industry, paint industry was the first to come forward and even sit down with governments and discuss. At that time, the only programs in the world were in Canada. And across a number of provinces, they had a paint EPR program in place that was a consumer fee. So we had many of these ministry officials and also recyclers come down from Canada, from British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, to our meetings that were in the United States, and they were hybrid even back then. And they talked about how their program worked. And I think all of us, governments and industry, were impressed by that. So we modeled our program off of what was happening in Canada.
So is it the final question, and I'm not being overly talkative, I hope, I'm just trying to seek clarity. Is this a fee paid by industry, or is it a fee paid by consumers? And if it's the latter, when do consumers pay the fee? And if it's the former, of course, I'd be interested in knowing when industry pays the fee.
I'll hand that to Heidi.
So Senator, you're ahead of my presentation a little bit. I'm gonna get there in 2 slides. Can I put you off until then?
Yes.
All right, and I'm just gonna take this opportunity.
Thank you.
I appreciate folks' interest, and we are gonna have opportunity for discussion. So if we could hold off on questions until we get through Heidi's presentation, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So if we want to go to the next slide. Before I talk about the financial side and the cash flow, I did want to just mention a few words about our network of drop-off locations. So our stewardship program does really work very cooperatively with the existing household hazardous waste infrastructure in each state. So when we start to develop the program, we reach out right away to that network. And again, that's a little bit different in every state. It's counties and municipalities that are already currently collecting household hazardous waste, which includes paint, at least the solvent-based paint. So we do work very cooperatively with them to participate in our program. And then the way that we make this program infinitely more convenient for the residents of a state is we reach out to retailers that sell paint. Retailers like independent paint stores, hardware stores, paint stores, construction material stores, those types of locations that are already very familiar with dealing with paint, and we ask them to volunteer to be collection sites. There's no requirement for them to be a collection site. It is absolutely a voluntary effort on their part. We are very successful in all of the states that we're working in to develop this network of collection sites. I'll show you some statistics in a moment. 75% of the collection sites in our programs across the country are retail locations. And as I said, we do work very collaboratively with them. We have staff on site in the state that makes periodic visits, provides training, provides materials. We're always on call for our retailers if they're having any difficulties. And for the most part, it's a very positive relationship between our retailers and our paint stewardship program. Many of them indicate that they get increased foot traffic in their stores because of this value-added service that they're providing to consumers. Next slide. So here's where we're gonna talk about the cash flow for the program, Senator. Here's typically how it works in a very sort of generalized manner. When we launch a new program, one of the first things we need to do is to figure out how much paint is sold into that state, how much paint that is covered under this program. So it's architectural paint that is pretty well defined. And as I think I've mentioned already, we have a list of products that are within the program and then products that are not in the program. Once we figure out how much paint is sold into the state, we can start to develop sort of our budget. But we also have to reach out to potential transporters. We have a very sophisticated bid process for transporters and processors to participate with us. And that way we can determine what are the costs for this program. So the sales of paint determine the revenue for the program, the expenses for transport and processing, those are the expenses of the program. And once we figure out what that is, we can determine what our fee schedule is. 100% of the revenue for paint care is the revenue derived from a fee assessed on the sale of paint. So when a consumer buys a can of paint, they will pay an additional fee, typically 75 to 80 cents for a 1 gallon can. And that is 100% of the revenue for this program. So every single quarter, manufacturers that sell paint into the state will tell us what their sales are, and they will send a check directly to the paint care organization. They will then, a check that represents the sale of that amount of paint times whatever the fee is, whether it's 75 cents or 80 cents or 85 cents. So that check is transferred directly to the stewardship organization. And that's how the stewardship organization operates and pays its bills. The paint manufacturer then will incorporate that 75 or 80 cents, whatever that fee is, into the sale of paint that they sell to a retailer. The retailer, when they sell that paint to a consumer, the consumer pays that 75 or 80 or 85 cents as well. So you can kind of see how the cash flow works for this program. And the next slide. And as I've mentioned already, the fee schedule for each state is different because the cost for transportation and processing differs in each state, just sort of depending upon economic climates. What I'm showing you on this slide is the range of fees. The fee is smaller for a smaller container, larger for a larger container. So you can see for the smallest containers, whether it's a pint or a quart, the fee ranges in all of our states between 30 and 65 cents. For a 1 or a 2 gallon container, the fee ranges between 65 cents and $1.35. And for a 5 gallon container, the fee ranges between $1.50 and $2.45 per container. So have I answered your question, Senator?
Thank you. Yes, you have. I appreciate it.
Okay, terrific. So the next slide really has to do with, how the expense side of the ledger for paint care works. So what are the fees that we're paying? I've already indicated the fees for transportation and processing really are the determining fees. That's the biggest portion of where our expenses go, 67%. That's an average across all of our programs. About 23% goes for sort of administrative operating costs like staffing, administrative costs, insurance, overhead. The state oversight fees that I've mentioned already, that's about 23% of our budget. And then the rest of it is for outreach and education to consumers, consumers and businesses who are consumers as well. But that's how the money is spent for pain care. And the next slide. So I think the next two slides, I'm really just trying to show you sort of how much we're collecting in each state and sort of what's the ratio between latex and solvent-based. Generally speaking, 80% of the leftover paint managed by Paint Care is latex. It's a water-based product. It's non-hazardous. About 20% of it is solvent-based paint. And in this chart here, you can see the sort of the disposition of what happens with latex paint. We're very successful in recycling paint to paint latex paint. The technology for doing so exists, is well known and well employed across the country. There is some latex paint that we can't recycle. Sometimes it's been stored too long, it's been frozen and thawed too many times, or it's contaminated somehow. We may not be able to recycle that portion of it, so some of it does go to landfill. We're really working on increasing our reuse programs. We're doing more sort of experimentation on that, like how do we really encourage reuse, but we're getting a little bit better at it. I'd say that's a harder thing for us to accomplish with leftover paint. For solvent-based paint, there really is no.
Sorry, what's going on with Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah, Minnesota's. In Minnesota, we have a harder time recycling paint because we have pretty strict contractual relationships there. And they have more stringent standards for recycling paint than in other places. So that is the state where we recycle the least amount of paint, but we're working on that. Typically, we're able to recycle between 70 to 80% of the latex paint that is collected.
And what is alternative beneficial use?
I think that's ADC basically is landfill cover. And there's some other technologies that are available. I mean, you can use paint as an additive in cements and some other types of consumer products, but those technologies are still sort of emerging. So this next slide really just kind of shows you volume over the course of time for each state. It's not broken out over solvent-based or latex, but as you can see, you know, Oregon, we've got numbers beginning in 2011, California 2013, but you can kind of see the history of how much paint we're collecting in each state. It stays pretty stable. You know, the idea that at some point we're going to get it all out of everybody's basement and garage doesn't seem to really be borne out. Here, there's always more paint that's coming in, and every single year we still get 10-year-old paint and 20-year-old paint. You know, so yeah, it's an interesting graphic here. And the next slide, these I guess are just our sort of vital statistics. You know, we have convenience standards in all of our statutes across the country, basically telling us, you know, you have to have so many locations in a state. Our goal really is to provide a collection location for every single person in your state within 15 miles. We've hit that in every single state. We've exceeded it in almost every single state. I will say that we do have pockets where we struggle. You know, there are really densely populated cities like Denver and LA, and there's not a lot of paint stores in the middle of, you know, South Central LA or in, you know, Lincoln Park, Chicago, or the Golden Mile or whatever they call it there. So it's hard sometimes for us to meet our criteria in those densely populated areas. And sometimes we have the same situation in incredibly rural areas where there are no shopping districts, you know. So we try to fill in with other types of events. We'll do paint collection events. We've tinkered around with things like door-to-door collection, which has been very difficult, but you know, we're looking for other strategies to kind of feed those populations and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to, you know, get rid of their leftover paint, and that we have an opportunity to manage it in the best way. Here's our collection statistic. We have over 2,500 year-round collection sites. 2,400 of those are retail locations in the 11 states. Right now, we're working on adding to that number in Illinois. We need to have between, I think, 230 and 250 retail sites in the state of Illinois to meet our convenience requirements, and we're well on the way there. The stores there seem to be enthusiastic about signing up. You know, over the course of time, we've done over 9,500 household hazardous waste events and paint only events. That's to feed some of those sparsely populated areas, some of the densely populated areas. I didn't really talk about our large volume direct pickup program, but that's a program that is really focused on commercial entities that collect a lot of leftover paint, like paint contractors, schools, prisons, hospitals, hotels, anybody who does a lot of painting. If they have over 100 gallons of paint, we don't want them taking it to a retail location because we don't want to overwhelm any retailer or any collection site. So we will send a transporter directly to their location, pick it up, so they don't even have to transport it. All of that is completely free. And really just to give you the overall picture of how this program works. So if you have leftover paint in your basement or garage, and you can take that to any one of our collection locations, when you return that paint to a collection location, there is no charge whatsoever. That is absolutely a no charge activity. When you buy a new can of paint, that's when the fee is assessed, and that is the revenue that is generated for paint care. Is there a question?
I just want to point out we're about 15 minutes behind schedule.
Okay. Well, this is my last slide, so. And again, just to amplify that we are working diligently to try to move this program into new states like Massachusetts. We've got legislation pending in Wisconsin, Missouri, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. Trying to pass legislation is a hard job. So that's a handful right there. I don't have a huge staff. I just have me and one other person that does this. So we're working as hard as we can. And my next slide is just contact information.
Okay, so we've just got 3 more slides. I just want to power through, and then we'll open up for questions, because there may be some questions that pertain to our slides as well. So let's move on to these more Massachusetts centric information here.
Sure. So this goes in the data, some of this data you've probably seen, it was in the package of information that we had presented by product stewardship put together for us. This just showed kind of what we have been doing work in paint here in Massachusetts in several areas. And you can see from the list here, this just kind of shows you, you know, what percent of communities in the population that currently have some sort of paint collection effort going on. The year-round stuff is is predominantly municipal, all of this is predominantly municipally driven collection activities and efforts. The year-round piece is predominantly the permanent centers that we have, household hazardous waste permanent centers that have been established by some municipalities, and or separate paint collection programs that are out there. The bottom half, it's hard for us to tell, but the six to 12 months is probably mostly one-day collection activities, that one-day events that may happen once or twice a year, to allow that includes all household hazardous waste. So, but we do have, you know, the way I kind of look at it, we got a third that have some pretty good access to service, a third that's one day, and then there's a third where there is no access at all to recycle paint. Next slide. This was calculation on what paint generation is in Massachusetts and what is possibly being recovered and disposed. So it was 1.8 million gallons. The disposal came off of our waste characterization study, and we're gonna look at this a little bit more because there's another source of information John and I thought of this morning that I think may modify this a little bit. But you know, basically showing that there is some collection going on. We're getting recovering. Right now, the collection, you know, the estimated 800,000 that's there, that's the one thing we have a question on. The process by Recolor was confirmed with them as to what they're handling. The additional 400 is either coming through, you know, going to one of the hazardous waste vendors that's taking it. And we did some checking on our own state contract to try to get the volume. We think some of this some of the portion of this is actually going disposed. It's going through disposal in a different avenue of information that PSI didn't have, which is our construction and demolition process. So we think there's gonna be paint in those pieces, and those facilities were not in our waste characterization study. So we've got some questions and some blanks here, but it gives you just a little bit of representation about, you know, what kind of a mass you know, the amount of material we're talking about. The next slide. Lastly, just want to point out what kind of we've currently been doing. We've had municipal assistance coordinators out there in the field for many years, helping communities institute reciprocal household hazardous waste event arrangements. In our recycling dividends grant program, we provide funding to municipalities for their program, and one of the ways that they can get credit for that funding is by holding you know, municipal HHW and paint collections. We've got regional permanent center grants, so it's nice to hear that Paint Care services those. We've got municipalities that run regional paint collection efforts that help with HHP and paint. We've got a state contract for household hazardous waste, which includes paint services and a variety of other services to help municipalities ease the procurement process and get right to the service end of things. We've also recently had some end market support. We actually supported Recolor with a grant from DEP to help them try and expand under our recycling and reuse business development grant. And then lastly, the Recycling Works program, it's a business-focused program, has the capability of informing and educating a lot of the smaller businesses that are out there about what the requirements are, both for recycling, but management of hazardous waste, you know, at small scale side, what we would call the very small quantity generators. That's it.
Okay, can we keep going? So the next one's just gonna be a clarifying question. We had a three-way tie. So I'm just gonna go alphabetically at this point in terms of who gets to go first. So Councilor Delgado is first in the alphabet, therefore gets to ask the first question.
All right, I like that. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I learned a lot. I am one of those people that has paint in my basement. I have a couple buckets, so learning the process here. Did you say the Paint Care, you guys represent the paint manufacturers? Just want to clarify that.
The American Coatings Association represents the paint manufacturers. The stewardship organization is called Paint Care, and that's the organization that was set up by the paint manufacturers.
Okay. So I had so kind of the perspective I'm looking at this is, you know, impacts to gateway communities, urban communities like Springfield, you know, particularly what the impacts to their including but not limited to like what impacts to the municipal budgets and financial impacts to residents. And so I had similar questions like Senator Barrett around costs. So you guys did answer a lot of those. So at the end of the day, the consumer, the resident is bearing the cost for these programs. I did have two separate sets of questions though. Do you know how often a household pays for paint? 'Cause I'm just trying to imagine, what the financial impact on like a resident will be. I mean, I know for me, I don't buy paint that often, probably once every year, every couple of years. So do you have any stats on that? And then also, is the fee reflected on the receipts when folks purchase the paint?
So I don't have specific data on consumer behavior and how often consumers buy paint. But our sense of the matter is that paint's not an everyday purchase. It's not a monthly purchase. It's a project by project purchase. I will make a couple other comments on the fee itself. I represent companies like Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore and Behr. These companies want to sell as much paint as possible. They have a vested interest in making sure that this program runs as efficiently as possible. They want to keep that fee as low as possible. They do not want the fee on a sale of a can of paint to be a barrier for any one of their consumers. So we really work very hard to keep that fee as low as possible for that reason. And the other comment I wanted to make is you mentioned the impact on municipalities. One of the reasons that this program is sought after by many municipalities and counties that come to us and ask us to bring this legislation in the state is because they benefit directly from it. There's a very positive financial impact to counties and municipalities because when Paint Care comes into the state and we start operating our program, we work directly with the local municipalities and the operators of the household hazardous waste program. And our program will pay for the transportation and processing of the paint waste stream. So typically what happens is counties and municipalities see a cost savings right away and they have additional funds that they can spend on other programs because we're taking care of the paint waste stream.
Got it. And then if through the chair, if I could, the other set of questions was just kind of if you guys had more information about what Massachusetts does in different areas like gateway communities around collection, because accessibility is obviously a big thing for us. So information on that. And then I guess I'm just trying to understand the current process of collection for paint as it is now. Like who actually currently collects that now? Is it just like the retailers, because it sounds like, you guys come in after the fact, you pick it up, you recycle it, but I'm trying to understand what's the difference from the collection now to when you guys run into the program.
John, I think we can ask that. The way that it kind of works now is municipalities are providing 99.99% of the service that's currently out there for paint and other hazardous materials collection. So those are typically limited to the one-day collection events where people are bringing their household hazardous waste, they bring along their paint. Some communities have permanent collection or a frequency collection of paint only. Very few though, maybe 20 to 30 communities offer that. And then there's some permanent collection centers for household hazardous waste that also accept paint. So it's very limited access. The Paint Care program is one of those that kind of expands that to include retailers that start to offer that service. So you can imagine the points of the point of collection points expands dramatically when retail options such as hardware stores and other places start to take back paint.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more question.
Okay, so sticking with my alphabetical order, Mr. Melly next.
Yeah, so I guess my big question for you is that paint is somewhat unique compared with other product types and that consumers aren't the only end users. You know, we painted a bedroom a couple months ago and because I'm lazy, I hired someone to do it. And, you know, I didn't touch a drop of paint the entire time. I don't know where those cans went. And so I guess the question is, you know, you mentioned a little bit sort of the large scale, you know, commercial development, but I'm kind of thinking more like the residential house painters, interior painters, landlords, property managers. I wonder, first off, I imagine part of the answer to that question is just consumer education and they're one of the consumers, but also are there complementary policies to EPR? You know, I mean, sort of the sort of easy one to think off the top of your head is the idea of, you know, if you're gonna have a painting business in Massachusetts, you're required to bring the paint that you use back to a collection point. But I'm sure there are other examples, I hope there are other examples in other states of like how to engage that kind of middle scale paint consumer that is doing it professionally, but not on like a enormous scale.
So so our program, excuse me, the paint care program is really designed to service all consumers of paint. Excuse me. So painting contractors, like I said, hospitals, schools, prisons, hotels, anyone that is applying architectural paint is eligible to use paint care. And we developed our large volume pickup program really to reach out to those commercial entities that are going to have those very large volumes. We've never felt the need to institute mandates or prohibitions on commercial entities to bring their paint to us because it's a sought after service. I mean, they want to manage, they want their inventory space back, you know, they want their warehouse space back. So instead of having it devoted to all these, you know, half empty cans or half full cans of paint, they're pretty happy for us to send a transporter there to pick it up. And like I said, that service is exactly the same as a consumer bringing the paint to a retail store or to a household hazardous waste facility. There's no cost to do that. We're gonna take care of it because we want that paint coming into us as well. So we're reaching out to those communities all the time with our outreach.
Yeah, I guess to me, like there's a large middle ground though between, you know, I have cans of paint in my basement and someone has a warehouse and there's, you know, the kind of like two guys in a van model of like paint businesses. Like, do you engage directly with those types of businesses in any way?
Yeah, I mean, we do. We're looking for them all the time. That's part of what our outreach budget is for, but you know, we've done over 12,000 large volume pickups across the country. So, I mean, we feel like we're getting to that audience. You know, we use newspapers, we use radio, we use TV, we do billboards in terms of outreach. So every time you go into a consumer or into a retail location to buy paint, you're supposed to get information from the retailer, which we provide to the retailer. We also have a really good website that has a collection site locator on it. So you can go onto our website, punch in your zip code, and you can find all the different collection or drop-off locations within, you know, a 20-mile radius of where you're actually sitting right now. And that's actually true for Massachusetts right now. Even though we don't have a program here, we've got all your municipal sites plugged in. So that you can see if you're gonna have to drive 5 miles, 10 miles, or 30 miles to go to one. But if you look in Connecticut, you probably have to drive less than 3 miles to find one.
Thanks, that's all.
Ready?
Thank you. Bill Rennie, Retailers Association of Massachusetts. So we represent, we have approximately 4,000 members across the state. Independent chain, large and small. Probably over 100, 120 independent hardware stores, as well as some of the larger chains. We do not have Benjamin Moore or Sherwin Williams as members, who are paint manufacturers, but also happen to have some retail stores. And I think it, you know, no secret to a lot of folks in the room that we have long opposed this program. And, you know, when you listen to how the program was developed, what I heard was that, you know, government, industry, groups came together, and the program that came out of it ended up being 100% financed by a group that wasn't in the room, and that's the consumer. When I think of EPR, you know, extended producer responsibility, I don't think of a program that is 100% financed by the consumer. So I think, you know, we've surveyed our members repeatedly over the years. Is this something that, you know, they would support? Is it something that they would participate in? And, you know, they certainly are not, I haven't found anyone who's looking to collect paint. Retailers come in all shapes and sizes, and typically they utilize all the space they have to sell product and serve the consumers. So I did want to ask a question on the fee and how it's moved over the years. Is the fee, when the fee is set, is it based on the paint sales specifically in that state? Or do you look at how it's moved in other states? Because I understand that from what the fees were in the earlier days of the program, and a number of states are now increasing the fees.
The fees are set by determining what the sales are in the state and then looking at the cost of transportation and processing. And the fee schedule is developed. Basically with those 3 data points in mind. The idea is, again, we want to keep that fee as low as possible because my manufacturers want to sell as much paint as possible. The fee is included in the program plan so that when the agency reviews the program plan, they have that data in front of them, as well as all of the financial data that was collected to arrive at that fee. And the fee is then kind of set for a period of time. Over the course of time, I mean, obviously, we're going to set an annual report in every single year with another financial report, reporting on all the money collected, on all the money spent. And we're going to look at trends. You know, are we covering our costs? Do we have enough of a rainy day fund in case there's a dip in sales? Are transportation costs going up? What are the trends in this particular state? It's all confined to the state. We're not setting fees in any state based upon the economic climate in another state. So it's all based upon what's going on in this state. If over the course of time, we determine that the fees are too high, we're going to decrease those fees. And we've done that for 2 states. We've done it for California, we've done it in the District of Columbia. If over the course of time, we're not covering our costs and we're operating the program in the red, we are going to increase our fees. And we have done that in states as well. But that's basically how we're looking at this. We want the fee to be set and known and stay in place for a certain period of time. We want our retail locations to have that certainty that we're not going to change the fees every year or every 6 months, or, you know, I think best case scenario, we have a fee structure that stays in place for 4 to 5 years. And then we have 4 to 5 years of data and trends that we can look at and see if we're on track. And then if we feel like we need to change it, the first thing we're gonna do is another financial audit, figure out what we think the fees ought to be. And then we're gonna go to our oversight agency and say, look, here's where the trends are financially. We think we have an issue that we've got to address with the fee schedule. And we're gonna work with our oversight agency to change those fees. But the philosophy is that fee is gonna stay static for, you know, some period of time, because we don't want, you know, we just don't want our retailers having to change their systems every 6 months or, you know, any short period of time.
And so for a consumer like me, I buy a can of paint, a gallon of paint, I put it on the wall. I might have a little left over. I put it in the basement or in the boiler room, wherever, and it stays there, and it's not bothering. I keep it there. I'm a horrible painter, so when I go to touch up or whatever, I go down, I haven't sealed it properly, and it's dried out, and it's just, you know, at that point, it's waste. So in that instance, as a consumer, what have I paid for? So, and I do think that there would be a lot of folks like me that, you know, you buy a gallon of paint, what percentage of that is actually put on the wall versus what you have over? And I know they have different fee amounts for different size containers. But you know, if I need a small amount of paint and I buy the small container, I'm still, you know, probably gonna have only a little bit left. If I, you know, have a larger room, I buy a gallon of paint, I'm still probably gonna have maybe the same amount left as if I had the small container. So, interesting that the fees are higher as just the size of the can gets larger, I guess. I don't know if that's part of the reason,
Part of the cost.
part of the cost.
Managing the end of life of that product. But, you know, an important thing to remember is that the day this program starts operating, you can bring all the paint you have in your basement or garage in and you haven't paid a dime for that. So whether it's been in your garage for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, whether it's this much paint or this much paint, or it's a quart or a 5-gallon container, you can bring that into all of our collection sites and we will manage the end of life of that product.
I don't want to dominate the time.
Thank you. Senator Barrett.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this presentation. Very, very helpful. I have a small informational question and then a larger thought question really for the entire group. The small information question follows on the last question, which is that you do accept the product regardless of its condition. So no dried up paint cans are rejected. That's the small informational question, and then I have a larger thought question after that. But is that the case that I can bring anything back at any time regardless of its condition?
That's absolutely correct, Senator. As long as it is a architectural paint product, if you've had it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if it's liquid or solid or something in between, you can bring it to a paint care collection site.
Thank you. My larger thought question is for the group, and that's I've learned a lot, and I think this is a very interesting program to consider. But again, I'm not sure it fits within the working definition of extended producer responsibility. What I would imagine, and I'm an amateur when it comes to EPR, relatively speaking, is that we would build something into the manufacturing end or build incentives so that manufacturers internalize something at the basic manufacturing end that would make the paint product less potentially polluting because it was in their interest to make a less polluting product, or alternatively, where they innovated in terms of marketing, in terms of container, or again, in terms of the chemistry of the product, because they were incentivized to do so. This is an alternative, perhaps, to EPR, really more than an example of it. This does move the responsibility downstream, ultimately to the consumer, who not only pays, but is responsible for the choice of whether the paint remains in the basement, quite possibly for years, or alternatively gets disposed of illicitly despite the existence of these incentives. So if it's going to be all the downstream responsibility, none of the upstream responsibility, and if my choice includes, out of sheer distraction and life doing what life does, by just keeping the paint on hand, it's remaining as polluting as it ever was because the constituent elements in the paint never changed, never evolved, the containers never evolved. Isn't this an alternative to EPR, perhaps one with merit, but an alternative nevertheless that could leave, and we haven't seen a slide on this point, 10% of the paint stream recycled in the way that you've illustrated here, but 90% of it remaining in my basement and in my neighbor's basement to be disposed of God knows how 20 years from now.
I offer an answer to that question? A brief one. Senator, I think your point's well taken, and I think this goes back to my initial question about the role of the oversight agency. You know, I mean, I think you can imagine there are many things you could bake into a program plan that the agency would require to, you know, reduce the percentage of the more hazardous paint types through their plan to reduce overall use of paint. You know, I mean, one of the things with mattresses is that DEP has a mattress disposal ban, and it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's illegal to drop a can of paint in the trash currently. And so, you know, and obviously the pushback to that would be, well, we need the places for people to take it that aren't the trash, and that's where this comes in. So I think there are a lot of ways the role of the regulating agency and also the statute and the guidelines that it's setting out through that in terms of the guardrails to ensure that the money is being spent for not just management, but also sustainability and waste reduction. I think that's accomplishable within the bounds of this program. And that I think is something that, you know, ultimately when this whole thing kicks back over to you and Chair Barber, that we're happy to provide ideas if you need them on how to ensure that this is not just, you know, managing the cost of paint, but accomplishing environmental goals as well.
Thank you. And thanks again for this interesting presentation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Ryan, you're next.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Just a quick question, kind of getting a little more in the weeds here. You know, we keep talking about paint. What about stain? Is that considered paint? Or are there other types of paint stains that are excluded from this entire program?
So I know I've mentioned our website before. It's a really good website. If you've never taken a look at it, there's a, excuse me, an extensive list of the products that we do collect. It does include stains. So that is an architectural product that is managed by this program.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I'm getting ready to stain my deck and I need to know.
You know, it's okay. I did want to respond to one of the senator's comments. You know, this program's been operating successfully since 2008. It's really one of the, I mean, I know I'm tooting our own horn here for my industry, but it's an award-winning program. It's been winning awards across the country since it's been operating. It's really known as one of the gold standard stewardship programs across the country. I don't think there's a stewardship organization that can boast the numbers that this program can, you know, presents. So, you know, is it a strict EPR program? I believe that it is. I know that Scott Cassell and I might differ on some of the specific definitions of what an EPR program is, but this is a program that was developed through conversation with stakeholders at the table, including US EPA. And this is the program that resulted from that conversation, that everybody agreed, let's see if this works. And what we've been demonstrating since 2010 is that this program does work. It gets the leftover paint out of people's basements and garages. It keeps it as much as possible out of landfills. You know, we're really trying to work not only on our reuse program, but we also have information on our website that tells consumers how much paint to buy. So we're really trying to also educate consumers on, don't buy too much. You know, there's a calculator on our website that says, here's how you figure out how much paint you need to buy so you don't have anything left over. And the other thing that I haven't really focused on it at all is not only are we managing the leftover paint that comes in the cans, but we are managing the containers. You know, our goal is to recycle not only the paint, but the containers as well. And I know that's something you're gonna be talking about in some of your advisory groups with the paper and packaging. But we're engaged in that conversation as well. And our goal is to make sure we're recycling the containers for paint.
If I could just very briefly, I'm probing, but I'm not criticizing. I think you've got a very interesting program, and I don't want you to be discouraged by my questions. That said, do you have percentages of the total paint stream diverted into your program as opposed to, as you say, remaining in somebody's basement or otherwise unaffected by the incentives that we've set up here?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm not sure I understand. Are you asking how much is recycled versus how much goes to landfill?
No, I'm just asking a ballpark. I'm looking for the success overall.
Oh,
This,
okay.
incentive system, which is to say, and I can appreciate that devising a metric itself might be tricky, but at the end of the day, I'm wondering how, for example, how much paint is still going into the ground as illicit disposal or in the trash can for trash pickup. How much of the potential disposal waste stream is captured by your program, and how much of it is continuing in the fashion that it would have happened had your program not existed?
Yeah, that's a difficult metric to try to put your hand on. You know, what we do know is how much paint is sold because that's reported to us by manufacturers. What we don't know is how much is actually used by consumers and then how much they're putting away because they want to hold on to it for a year or 5 years or 10 years. And we don't have numbers on what would actually go in the municipal waste stream. So we know what's sold, we know what we collect, because we can track those two numbers. Those other two data points are unknown to us at the moment.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the DEP. So I just observed that it matters, of course, if we're capturing 10% of the potential paint stream or excess paint stream or unused paint stream, or whether we're in the states that have the program, whether we're capturing 75% of the leftover paint stream. However you define all these terms, obviously we want to know, in other words, how well this stuff works.
Yeah, it's also difficult for us to pinpoint how old paint is too. So hard for us to tell if it's paint that was purchased that year, purchased the previous year, 3 years ago. Easier for us to tell if it's 20 years old, but not so easy if it's just a couple years old.
So I'm just mindful of time. And so we do have an open discussion coming up. And I just want to make sure that folks at this point, just limit yourselves to clarifying questions for the presenter, and then we'll likely get to some other observations, questions that you have. So if you have clarifying questions based upon the presentation, let's take those. Let's try to get through those by noon because we're going to run out of time here. So if we can go in order, put yours down. I think you're next.
I don't have quite a
Oh, sorry. Mr. Rennie, do you have another question?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, Bill Rennie. On the financing model, is paint care, is there a paint care California, a paint care Illinois, a paint care Rhode Island? Does the money from states intermingle, or are they all sort of siloed in its own entity? And then in an instance where, say you have, your costs are increasing compared to the revenue in a particular state. You mentioned this rainy day fund. Are those funds mingled together, and do they then go and support that state, or are they all siloed?
They're all siloed. The model calls for each organization to be a limited liability corporation. All of the money raised from sale of paint in one state stays in that state. There's no intermingling of those funds.
Hi, Josie Albert from the Mass Municipal Association. I was just curious if you could speak to the payments to municipalities and other paint collectors. Is that on a reimbursement basis? And maybe if you could speak to the first year of implementation of how that kind of wave of material coming into the collection centers has been financed, if it is on a reimbursement basis. If there's any like upfront costs or how that shakes out.
I don't think there are any upfront costs. I have to think about that for a moment, but there are no direct payments to the municipalities. What occurs is basically a partnership agreement between the municipalities and Paint Care, and then the costs for transportation and processing of the paint waste is paid directly by Paint Care. So Paint Care is not sending any checks to the municipalities. It is literally paying the expenses for transportation and processing of a waste stream. I don't believe there's any upfront costs that I'm aware of. There's a relationship agreement. There will be training materials that would be provided by Paint Care, which for a municipal facility may or may not really be necessary, considering you're already doing that activity, but I'm sure we provide them anyway. And there's probably outreach materials that Paint Care would provide as well. But I might have to follow up on that. I'm not sure
No, that's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So thank you all for your questions. We're going to open this up for discussion. And the first question, pretty open-ended, do you think the Paint Care program would work in Massachusetts? Does anyone have any responses to that question?
So my name is Juanita Trabert. I work for the city of Newton. I am on this commission representing Mass Recycle, which also houses the Massachusetts Product Stewardship Council, which I chair. So I have a lot of experience in the municipal sector in handling waste. For Newton, I manage their trash and recycling program, and we have a permanent household hazardous waste collection facility that collects a lot of paint. So I want to address some of the statements that were said before, but to answer the question very directly, a Paint Care program would absolutely work in Massachusetts. It would work for the municipal governments that are currently bearing these costs, and it would work for consumers by creating a tremendous amount of convenience that is not accessible right now. If I may just make some quick comments to address some of the other concerns that were brought up about impacts to municipalities. So it's been estimated that 50% of our household hazardous waste costs, which those program costs can vary depending on the size of your municipality. Newton spends about $50,000 per year. So half of those costs are due to paint that we receive. We only take oil-based paint for our household hazardous waste program, which is only 20% of paint that consumers are trying to get rid of. The state guidance for getting rid of latex paint is to dry it out and throw it in your trash. And when I tell residents that response, they want to throw that paint can at me. And it's people don't understand what a nuisance issue this is until they're actually trying to get rid of a can of paint. And people want to do the right thing, but right now it is as difficult as possible to do that, which is why a lot of us just hoard paint cans in our basement until you need to move. Because more and more, the Realtors Association is requiring every resident to clean out their homes, including paint cans that for many years would just sit there from owner to owner. So this is a growing problem as people become more transient and move more frequently. And it's becoming a more pervasive problem as realtors are enforcing, cleaning out of basements to not put that problem onto the new owner. So I just want to emphasize that right now, taxpayers as a whole are paying for what little collection system we have, whether they are buying paint or not. And so by changing to this system, it is a fee only for those that are consuming the paint. So that is a choice that they can make. I would, paint has a lot of benefits. It is protective, but it is, for the most part, a luxury purchase. It's not that a fee is going to prevent somebody from buying a can of paint. If they need a can of paint, it's already $40 to $80 for a gallon. Another 75 cents to $1.25 is not going to make or break that decision. Regarding the receipt, the fee being visible on the receipt, I want to state that the language in the bill that is before the legislature states that a visible fee is optional for retailers to put on the receipt, but in programs across the country that exist, it is extremely typical that all retailers will put that fee on to make it visible to the consumer. I think that this system would close a lot of gaps that we have right now in our current lack of system. So it really creates a closed loop system that allows people to do the right thing as easily as possible. I'll end there.
Thank you. Ms. Burgess.
Thank you. I want to concur with everything that Juanita said. I retired from MassDEP several years ago. I ran a regional hazardous waste collection contract for 39 communities north of Boston, and for Jose, this included many gateway cities. And actually, at the beginning of that contract, there was a whole lot more oil-based paint than there is latex paint. But actually, before I worked at MassDEP, I was the recycling coordinator for Essex County, which was it lasted as long as the county did. It was a position funded by MassDEP. And when I started that position, the first thing they said, we want you to come up with a regional collection program for our communities. And we want to change it so that we know what the cost is going to be, because municipalities would hold hazardous waste collection events. They would categorize the waste that came in. Communities had no way of knowing what the costs were. So it was revolutionary in that we changed it based on volume. As you've heard today, most of the volume of that paint, most of the volume that came into that was paint. Yes, now it's just limited to oil-based paint. But we are seeing most of what's coming to these events still is paint. On the other side, I really appreciate hearing from you, Bill, and hearing what the challenges are. My experience in talking with smaller retailers, they want to see this. They want the foot traffic. You've heard Greg mention several times recolor paint, and for any of you that don't know, this is a homegrown, Hanover-based, woman-owned recycling business that is thriving, who has had to go outside of Massachusetts to source its feedstock to create their recycled paint, which sells well. I have it in my son's former bedroom. And it's a fabulous paint. And just recently, it was announced that Recolor was partnering with the Home Decor Group. The Home Decor Group is a Peabody-based paint retailer. They have 22 stores in Massachusetts. They have stores in New Hampshire as well. And they're partnering with Recolor to accept latex paint. And they're charging $5 a can. So I just want to go back to the fact that when I was working for MassDEP, my 39 communities, many of them charged their communities, and they charged a lot more than $1 or $1.35 per can. So consumers want it, and at least what I'm hearing from retailers, they want it because it's great customer service. It brings in foot traffic, and we are actually completing the circle here in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rennie.
Again, Bill Rennie, and before I forget, thank you for the presentation. Excellent job. And I agree with everything, but on the to the questions, do I think the paint care program would work in Massachusetts? I think it would. But you know, as it works in other states, I think the question is, you know, again, who pays for it? And you know, with 100% consumer financing, retail is collecting the fee at the point of sale. You know, we've dealt with the competitive problem of New Hampshire for decades and decades. You know, they have no sales tax. There's a tremendous amount of retail, you know, in southern New Hampshire, and significant portion of our population will take advantage of that. You know, we say it's only $1.75 or $1.35 a can. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it would be yet another incentive for folks not to shop in Massachusetts and not to buy product here in Massachusetts. But they could buy it in New Hampshire for a lesser cost, you know, with the sales tax and the paint fee, you know, maybe $4 or $5 less per can, and then utilize the recycling infrastructure here in Massachusetts once it was set up. So, you know, I think they would have concerns on the competition side and the fraud side. I do have, it's my understanding that, you know, the fee is on the receipt in all of the states. And I think that's important, so the consumer knows what they're paying for, and that it's been added to the bill. You mentioned Recall, they're RAM member as well, and we're proud to have them. You know, I think that they've set up a program that, you know, works on a voluntary basis without you know, charging every consumer in the state up front. So we have significant concerns, and we remain, you know, opposed to it. I know in the old version of the legislation was just dealing with post-consumer paint, architectural paint. It's my understanding in the new version of the legislation, they're changing it to paint or paint products, which includes aerosols and also additional products as defined in a program plan. So we would have concerns with, you know, sort of an open-ended program as well. You know, are we talking about architectural paint? That's one thing. We're adding in aerosols is another, and then, you know, left up to be decided by the program is just additional concern for us. So, but I certainly do appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Mass Municipal, I can't.
Yeah, Josie, thank you. I just wanted to state that the Mass Municipal Association, which represents the 351 different cities and towns in the Commonwealth, has adopted a resolution almost unanimously, I believe, back in 2019, supporting paint care and paint stewardship broadly as a solution for the challenges that cities and towns are facing. I think we heard a lot at the last meeting of the dramatic cost increases that towns and cities have been experiencing in managing these materials, and we really think that the support from paint care would be valuable. So just wanted to raise that, and I'm happy to share a copy of that resolution with the committee if that's helpful. But this continues to be a top priority legislatively for the Mass Municipal Association, and certainly happy to look at the different pieces of legislation that are on the table and think through some of the questions. I know aerosols has been kind of a new addition, and happy to hear any more context on that, or think critically about the legislation on the table, but wanted to raise that as well. And And just reiterate that cities and towns are grateful for any support and financial assistance and really want to expand the number of options that are available to residents. I think Juanita and Sharon have pointed this out, that the more convenience we can offer, the better, and the more paint will be diverted from landfilling and other, improper use or just ending up in basements, as we've all discussed. So just wanted to raise that and reiterate our support for paint care.
Thank you, and we would appreciate a copy of the resolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two sort of main comments around just the policy design and the program success. I mean, I think the first is, again, I come back to this kind of this middle ground, someone offering a professional painter. I really feel like there's an opportunity to bake into the legislation some complementary policies that support this idea that if someone's going to pay you to paint, that you have a greater obligation than just a resident, painting their own bedroom, to participate in the collection return piece. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I would love to think more with the people on this commission on just the idea that, again, if you're offering professional services, that you have a greater role to play in participating in the program. I don't think that's necessarily an EPR policy, but I think it supports the overall goal of what we're trying to accomplish here. And then the other piece, which I think is not universal to paint, I think it really applies to pretty much every category of product, is I want to reiterate the importance of giving clear legislative intent in the enabling statute, and also giving the regulating authority a strong role to play in setting the guidelines of what program plans look like. We have the solid waste master plan, and I think we should explicitly call out the idea that a program set up in Massachusetts, a program plan should explicitly meet the goals and have metrics oriented towards meeting the goals of the solid waste master plan in its program plan, to ensure that there is that sort of integration between what DEP is handing off to a product stewardship organization and what DEP and the state want to accomplish out of that.
Any concerns about the proposed approach that haven't already been raised? Obviously, you raised them already. We're not going to.
Can I jump in? Josie from the MMA again. I just wanted to raise maybe as a thought for MassDEP to take another look at the RDP program and see if additional incentives for cities and towns might be possible. I know RDP is kind of a point-based approach of certain activities get you a higher ranking on potential grant funding or, financial incentives. And this might be something where if a municipality did volunteer to be a paint collection site and work with paint care, if the program were to be passed, maybe there could be some additional points or incentives for those communities. And I'm not sure if there's a similar incentive program for just general paint retailers, but that might be something to think about of how the state can use existing programs to incentivize greater collection capacity in the state.
Thank you. Anyone on the commission have any other policy recommendations?
Tracy Triplett from the Attorney General's office. This is sort of we come at this in part from a consumer protection standpoint, which I think doesn't apply so much in the context of paint, the way this program is being discussed. But I do know that the different bills here do have a definition for recycling. They're a little bit different between the Senate and the House. And from what we hear from consumers in various arenas, there can be confusion about what recycling means in general. And again, not in this particular context, but what is a recyclable product? So I would just urge that there be some consistency across legislation, probably also looking at DEP's definitions of recycling, which I assume exist. And in particular, and this will probably come up in the context of plastics, concern about creating energy from products and not being something that is recyclable or recycling. So again, tangential, I think, to the paint context, but there are definitions of recycling in at least the bills that are out there now. And then the second thing, I assume there would be some enforcement process in whatever statute comes through, and perhaps General Law 21, like there may be already enforcement that applies to all these sections. I didn't look to see, but just wanted to point that out there too.
Thank you. right? And then, does anyone think there's information that requires further, that something's missing that we require further research on? Great. Go to the next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, to go back to two quick concerns. And it's kind of in reverse. So instead of concerns about the proposed approach, it's concerns about keeping things the way that they are. So one that was addressed earlier was this concern about cross-border sales or purchases of paint into New Hampshire. Every single other state has this law that borders Massachusetts. So I would actually counter to say that right now, Massachusetts is actually causing problems for all of those other programs, because we know my group of advocates, we have gone to hardware stores across the Connecticut border, and they have asked people where they were coming from when they brought paint to their store, and they're coming from Massachusetts, and then they're choosing to offer foot traffic and, make small purchases at a hardware store that is offering this program instead of buying from somewhere in Massachusetts because they couldn't recycle their paint. And then I also want to address the concern about kind of super users being obligated in the law to responsibly manage paint over like a non-super user, like a homeowner. Right now, the economic incentives are for those super users to pay for disposal of their leftover paint as trash. And this policy would shift that incentive for them to do the right thing, where they're paying much less than they do for their trash right now. So there doesn't need to be a separate parameter. It would shift the economics and make it the right thing to do and the cheapest thing to do.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Oh, Abby has her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Someone's online. Yes, Ms. Webb.
Hi there. Sorry about that. This is Abby Webb with Casella. It strikes me you had asked additional data that might be helpful would be just a little more clarity on what the costs are for municipalities in Massachusetts to run their household hazardous waste programs. And that stat was provided of roughly 50% can be attributed to paint care. I think, that would be a useful data point to have.
Mr. Goddard.
It's not public. This.
I think we're on public, aren't we? Oh, wait, I've lost track. We finish up with all commission members?
Yeah.
We did, okay. Mr. Goddard.
Hello, everyone. Phil Goddard with the Town of Bourne, Department of Integrated Solid Waste Management on Cape Cod. We were the recipient of, can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure. Yes.
Yeah.
We were the recipient of a DEP grant that we managed for the entire Cape, Barnstable County from DEP on paint care, a paint collection program. We work with Recolor, very successful. That's in the record. DEP has the results of that. Proved that people wanted it. A vestige of that, we have an annual collection with Dennis as the host every year to collect latex only. We fill a 53-foot trailer every year in one afternoon in about 4 hours. So there's a great demand. We've kept it. All the towns in the Cape support this and have contributed to keep the program alive. I just wanted to give you a quick perspective from the municipal collection site. We have a paint shed. Not everybody has a paint shed. It's a lot of work on our staff to collect the latex, separate it, put it in gaylords or pour it off. Especially oil-based paint, we pour that off into 55-gallon drums, and that's combustible, and that has to go out as hazardous waste at our collections. So the old days, my brother's telling me in the old dumps in the 60s, they used to light it on fire. So now we want that out. I will suggest that with recycling definition in the bill that I believe, and Heidi can speak to this, that oil-based paints that are part of this, and they're typically used for fuels blending, because to quote recycle them into some new product is extremely difficult. It's different than latex. So I think you better take note of that. We want that properly managed in a hazardous waste facility. The other thing I wanted to mention is that so the staff burden is considerable. We have people doing hours and hours of paint pour-offs all summer long. there's a serious gap in household hazardous waste collections. That, you know, from October till April, we have really no collections in the state. So we often get the homeowner, you know, my grandmother passed away. I've got a bunch of paint. Can I bring it down? So there's an off-season issue as well as just availability even during the season with HHW. They're just one-off events. So a lot of gaps out there. I would say that New Hampshire also has a bill pending as far as I understand. So, you know, that gap with New Hampshire could be closing soon. I think, you know, we'll be surrounded by states with paint care. So it would be very helpful to municipalities to have this. It would reduce, you know, the burden at the staff at the recycling centers all across the state. Some of them have very few employees to dedicate to this too. So the town of Bourne has submitted a letter to the ENR and has supported this over the years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hall.
Thank you. So I live in Greenfield, Massachusetts, where there are exactly 4 places that you could buy paint within the town. And I wanted to respond to the comment that retailers are not clamoring for this. Actually, I have been, my 4 locations are Home Depot. I did not go there. I understand the large retailers are unlikely to volunteer, but I went to my local Aubuchon's and to my Sherwin-Williams and to Hamshaw Lumber, which I think is, I can't remember if it's an Ace or a True Value affiliate. And all of them, the 3 small ones, all said they would enthusiastically volunteer. I was asked, what about the paint cans? Why aren't we recycling those? I explained that would be more likely to happen under this program. They have written letters saying that they are in support of this program. So I think if you start asking your local retailers, and every municipality has some, I think you will find that they are actually quite excited about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make a comment? Okay, we go to the next slide. So we're going to conduct a straw poll now to see if we can, I want to see for support or for a recommendation to enact legislation to establish an extended producer responsibility law for paint that aligns with the paint care model in surrounding states, Connecticut, Maine, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New York, to provide consistency across the region. So the idea here is if we vote in favor of this recommendation, we would, as our staff would then produce a more formal recommendation that follows the requirements laid out in the statute. Next meeting, before we get into the subject matter there, we would vote to approve that recommendation. We would send it out prior to the meeting, and then we could talk through it, and if there's changes that folks want to make, we would have a more formal recommendation. This is just seeking permission to produce that formal recommendation, circulate, and then vote on it next meeting. Have any questions? Oh, sorry.
You had,
yes.
Janet had her hand up.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So I don't want to overcomplicate this recommendation, but how does it relate to bills that are either, currently filed this session?
Right. I believe the decision was made, and I could be incorrect, that we wouldn't identify specific bills, that the legislature will do, they're going to move forward with whatever bills they want to pursue, but that we would simply state, in essence, something like this. Basically, we're looking for consistency with the surrounding states. That's what we're going for. And if they need to make certain adjustments to meet certain concerns, we could also, we've heard some suggestions from various members that there may be some things that we want to make clear in the legislation. So I don't anticipate that we're going to say, this is the bill. We're going to say, a bill that has these features to it, our commission is recommending that you go forward with that legislation. But leave it up to the legislature actually how they draft it. We're not going to do any drafting ourselves. We'll just sort of lay out the parameters. There may be some things that other states aren't doing that we as a commission think this bill should cover. So we wouldn't identify bills by number. Makes sense? Okay, yeah.
I don't recall that was the conversation in our first meeting. In fact, I thought it was the opposite, where we, as a commission, if there was a relevant bill, would choose to recommend a specific bill or not.
And we can have that discussion. I mean, I don't think, we don't have to assume that that is written in stone. I think right now, we're just looking for, we'll send out the recommendation to the commission, and then we'll meet next time. If the commission as a whole decides, we just want, you know, we voted in favor of pointing to a specific bill, that's the commission's decision, right? I thought we were gonna be just more kind of, you know, something that meets these parameters is what we're gonna be going for, but this, you know, we're the commission, so we can vote in favor of doing that, if that's what the consensus is.
Well, I would like to just go on record stating that I think this commission should specify specific bills by number that are before the legislature this session, as opposed to asking them to connect those dots.
I support this model. The thing that I want to see added to it is, a date. Because one thing, you know, these bills have been kicking around for like a decade now, and so I would like the commission to officially endorse, to enact legislation by 2026, you know, some version of that. You know, because, you know, that can be read by the legislature sometimes as, when you get around to it, 15 years from now, you know, so I think specifically this commission should call for action this legislative session.
So would you recommend adding to this recommendation, enact legislation by December 31st, 2026?
I don't care, this session.
Yeah, we should be precise.
Yeah, I would say, I would recommend, you know, by, I mean, let's say by December 31st, 2025, because they're not actually gonna do it until next year at the earliest, you know. I think the key here is that this is overdue, that we are behind other states, and that this is not, there's an urgency to this work that we're doing that should be reflected in the recommendations that we're showing.
Just that it's 2025 now, so. And we're getting a report to them.
Till January.
Oh, yeah, then by 2026, I'm fine with that, yeah.
Let's.
Or by July 31st, 2026,
Yeah.
given that that's consistent with the legislative calendar.
Is that when the legislative session?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's take that one motion. So I'm gonna seek a motion to amend this statement to add by July 21st, 2026, after legislation. Can I get a,
So moved.
Seconded.
and all in favor, or discussion, discussion.
This is an official vote? Or what?
We're voting on this is just, what we're doing, it's challenging. This is a straw poll. But if all vote in favor of this, we are going to send out a formal recommendation to the commission, and then we will vote on that recommendation next week. This is just to say, we want to send something out to the group. That's more detailed than this. We need to tick off all the different requirements in statute. We can't just say, you should do paint care. We have to say, you know, pursuant to the statute, here's what we consider, here's what we are recommending. We're trying to do this sequentially, because we're all concerned about time. If we wait until January 2026, pushing things back. So
this motion is on the wording of what's offered.
just on the wording on this right
Next, yeah.
So we had a motion, any discussion on that? Anybody object to that? Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have one opposed, so that motion carries. So we'll take a new straw poll, which is the language would be to support a recommendation to enact legislation on July 31st, 2026, to establish an extended producer responsibility law for paint that aligns with the paint care model in surrounding states, Connecticut, Maine, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New York, to provide consistency across the region. Can I get a motion to approve that language?
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Just to maybe reiterate, it's going to include specific bill numbers, right?
That's up for discussion.
We'll discuss that next week. This is just broad based. We want to make sure we have the consensus of the commission, put out some language. Okay, so all in favor? Say aye. And opposed?
No.
One opposed, the motion carries. So we will prepare a recommendation prior to next meeting, correct?
Just as a thinking, maybe that
I'm with you.
prepares should
I'm
be
not.
at the front of this motion.
What should I say again?
In other words, you're instructing us to prepare
Right.
a policy position that recommends
Yeah.
right? I think that's what
Okay,
we,
well, I mean, yeah. I
It's
mean,
somewhat-
It's a recommendation. What we'll be
Right.
sending out is the recommendation, right? So.
You might flesh it out a bit, because
What's
that, the actual, what's written up by staff might be fleshed out a bit from this general
Yes,
statement.
Yes, there will be a much more detailed statement, which
Yeah.
will, so this is just support.
This is a concept.
So we will send out a more formal recommendation. Commission will review it, at the next meeting, we'll review it, and if everybody, not everybody, but if the majority votes, then we will prepare that and send it to the legislature. Next. That's the thing. Right? That's, yes.
Thanks, Josie from the MMA. I had a question about something that's posted on the EPR Commission website, which is the public comment submission form. I was curious, I noted that some questions have been answered online as of earlier this month, but was curious if there was a plan, if there are questions or comments or suggestions around paint recommendations in particular, if those would be shared with commission members ahead of seeing a straw proposal on EPR law for paint. Or if there's another way that you'd like us as commission members to send feedback about what the specifics might look like.
No, we'll.
Yeah,
we can send those
we
out.
can share those as they come in. I mean, again, we've been looking at trying to answer the questions as best we can when they're coming in, like every look at them a couple weeks and then versus trying to instantly answer every single one of them. But certainly if we get it, and I would remind any of the public who's on that there is a public comment section on our website at the MassDEP EPR Commission webpage. And you're welcome to submit public comments about paint or any other of the items that we've been addressing or will address.
To that point about, that Josie said, I think that there should be some type of deadline, or, it doesn't have to be like a hard deadline, but in order to get those materials collected from interested stakeholders in a timely fashion so that they could get out to commission members. So perhaps that deadline is like 2 weeks from now, so that it would allow for a week to, accumulate it and then get it to commission members in the prep materials for the next meeting.
I think I was gonna respond to Josie's point. I think it's maybe similar with to what you're saying, Juanita. Like, I think this is we're still working this out as we go. This is our first product specific meeting. But I think the cycle of reviewing and responding to those comments following a meeting is probably an appropriate time to do it, and then get those shared back out. So we can look at a specific date for that, but I think that this is an appropriate time to gather and consolidate and respond to comments after we have a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to something DEP sent out for this meeting that you might not have had a chance to fully go through, but it's a background document that our organization, Product Stewardship Institute, developed for this meeting and this topic. And there's information on it that will answer some of your questions, such as there's 10% of all paint purchase goes unused by the consumer. So that's a data point from our organization and the US EPA. So there's data there that you'll be very interested in. So I'd recommend taking a look at that. Thank you.
And we'll be posting that and all of the other package informations that were distributed, the guideline, revised guidelines, in the next day or two. Great. On the website.
Yep.
Josie from the MMA again, just one additional comment on the differences between the language in the Senate and the House legislation. This is something I've taken a look at with some other folks. It's my understanding that the House's language is slightly more updated and includes that definition of aerosols, and that's the language that's preferred by the ACA. That's my understanding. Heidi, feel free to chime in on that. I just wanted to raise that the two do look different, and that timeline could be worked out as well, and when it would take effect. But I think that's the main the main difference, but that one is slightly more updated. That's
Thank
helpful for DEP staff when they're taking a look.
Appreciate it, thank you. Okay, I think we've come to time. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
One last-
Oh, wait, no.
One last question on that. So are you envisioning that we will recommend a specific bill?
That's open to debate.
Okay.
That's open to debate. I think that I might have to, I probably consult with my attorney.
Okay.
Because we need to make sure, within, we gotta make sure it's legal. So you would just, I'm willing to.
Yeah, because
That wasn't what we were anticipating.
Okay.
This is a commission, right? I'm the
Yeah.
chair, but I don't get the final vote. So if the commission votes for something, as long as it's appropriate, that's what.
Yeah, in my mind, that we would look at the policies and, the legislation would, be up to the legislature. And there's a lot, I mean, paint might have 2 different versions of the bills. Mattresses might have 3, plastics might have 20. So I would prefer that we stick to the policies versus specific
And I
legislation.
think we can, but that's something we can discuss next. Yes.
The legislature tasked this commission with making recommendations to them, so I think it makes the most sense to specify bills that are before them.
Alright, so I gotta go. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody online.